So I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I learned these words when I was in religious school at Temple Israel in Akron, Ohio. We were going through some of the neighborhoods that had been burned and looted after the assassination of Martin Luther King Jr., which, by the way, was 45 years ago yesterday. We were there to talk to people about their experiences and hear what they had to say about what was going on in their community. And the message to us was so clear. We had a responsibility to try to make the world a better place, and we should not remain silent. So I like to say that I come from a long line of activists and that social activism was programmed into my DNA. My grandmother worked with Margaret Sanger on the Lower East Side of New York, handing out illegal birth control door to door, risking arrest. In fact, we think she might have dropped out of college to keep doing that. My mother was a professional volunteer, and she started the first Head Start program in Akron out of meetings in her living room, and later went on to be the first Jewish person on the school board in Akron, which was significant because at the time they were talking about prayer in school and school busing. And she received so many threats to her home that she had to have a police car outside the house many nights. So it's in my blood. And I'm here to share a little bit of my story with you because I'm really not anything special. I don't do wonderful spoken word. I haven't cured anybody of cancer. I don't help people walk. But what I do is what I care about, and that is work for social change. And I hope it'll convince you that you also can do that. So I came here to the University of Michigan School of Natural Resources and the Environment, where I was going to be an environmental education teacher, until I met the most important mentors of my life, Bunyan Bryant and Jim Crowfoot. They taught me, they introduced me to people who were working as careers for social change. Environmentalists, union activists, women's activists, social and economic justice activists, and I was gone. That was it. I still know all the birds and all the trees, but there was no turning back for me. So when I graduated from SNRE, I got in my little car and I drove to Jacksonville, Florida, where I was going to work for ACORN, the Association of Community Organizations for Reform Now, as a community organizer in low-income neighborhoods to help them work on economic justice issues. What the heck did I know? Nothing. And I used to cry myself to sleep for the first couple of weeks in my convent bedroom where I was living. But I did learn from the folks that I was working with so much about dignity and about the power of working together. I later went on to Phoenix, Arizona to work in political campaigns in 1980 when the anti-abortion forces were first getting started in electoral politics, and I was supposed to organize pro-choice voters. I didn't even know if there were pro-choice voters in Phoenix, Arizona, but I did learn that there were, and I also learned that you can raise money in all kinds of crazy ways. They auctioned off a vasectomy to raise money for candidates. So I love that. I then went on to Tennessee, where I worked for the ACLU of Tennessee. You might be able to tell what year that was by looking at the way people are dressed and their haircuts. We had a lot of issues to work on, but one of the most compelling to me was the fact that the LGBT community was being mercilessly harassed by the police. The only gay bar in all of Southwest Tennessee, they were going in every night and harassing people. You have to remember, this was even before we knew we had AIDS. And we got that stopped and lots of other things. And I eventually went on to Washington, D.C., where at the ripe old age of 28, I was a lobbyist for the ACLU in the Reagan years, with the moral majority trying to stop every civil liberty that's known to humankind. And there I learned, and this will be really shocking to you now, that Republicans and Democrats can work together for good. We need a little lesson on that now. So then I was lured back here to Ann Arbor. by these amazing activists at U of M who took the courage and sat in a vice president's office demanding that the university do something about rape on campus. And out of that protest came SAPAC, Sexual Assault Prevention and Awareness Center, and I was really fortunate to be hired to be the first director. And there I learned even more about the power of speaking out and telling your truth. So here I am, back in Washtenaw County. There's a lot of fabulous things here, and you all know them, not the weather, but everything else, since everybody's talking about the weather today. One thing that I love about Washtenaw County is that we're this little liberal bubble, right? Where last week, more people changed their Facebook profile to the marriage equality symbol than in any other county in the country. That is something to be proud of. But here's some facts about Washtenaw County you may not know about. So we have about 345 people in this county. We have 78,000 that are families with children in school. And the median income is about $60,000 a year. It's a pretty nice place to live. But what you may not know is that it's also home to over 4,000 people who were homeless in 2011. And that half of those folks were families with children. And that 14% of our population lives below the poverty level. I work for the Washtenaw Housing Alliance, and what I know is that homelessness is the most incredible tragedy of our time. In this country, with the kind of wealth that we have and the kind of political will we can have for so many things, to allow anybody to go without a home is a downright crime. That is just wrong. I'm going to tell you a little bit more about the folks who are homeless. So between 21 and 37% had a job when they became homeless. And about a quarter of them had some college education. So my point of sharing these statistics with you is to make sure that you understand that homelessness is not confined to one group of people, to one set of problems. There are many problems and many reasons that people become homeless, but there's one thing that everybody shares, and that is that they can't find affordable housing. I'm going to let Paul tell you his story, but I'm going to read it to you. Paul lives in an apartment run by Avalon Housing here in Washtenaw County. I was living in an abandoned house. I didn't have running water or heat. My health was failing. A friend was bringing me food. I was in a desperate situation with a desperate need. I had no family, no money, and was not sure how long I was going to live. On top of that, I'd been mugged several times. I was a slow-moving target on the streets. That's how I lost my teeth. And that, to me, is a constant reminder for how wrong things were going for me. I didn't know where to turn. And a friend then told me about Avalon Housing. They had 6 apartments designated for homeless people, and I was lucky enough to get one of those apartments. In 1993, I moved in and was no longer homeless. I was no longer scared. My health improved, and I slept at night. Avalon built a relationship with me and made sure I had everything I needed: food, supplies. They got me to doctor's appointments. This way, I can live life independently. Avalon Housing provides what we call permanent supportive housing. That means it's housing that's permanently affordable based on your income, and it comes with people who can help you deal with problems that might come up for you. Avalon is a unique kind of landlord. They house people with the greatest challenges. People have been homeless for years, people with disabilities. Avalon sees their job as keeping people housed, and that is the solution to homelessness. It's as simple as that: housing. So the Washtenaw Housing Alliance is this crazy coalition of 32 nonprofits and government offices who have one thing that they're working on: ending homelessness. A lot of people say, wow, don't you get depressed? Like, how are you going to end homelessness? Well, we do a lot of things, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about it. So one of the things we did, and some of you may know the Delana Center, is we built the Delana Center. Fabulous shelter downtown with a community kitchen run by food gatherers, a medical clinic staffed in part by U of M nursing students and medical students, and case managers who are working on nothing other than helping people get housing. From there, we went on to get a shelter for families who were homeless in Washtenaw County. Our partners at St. Joe's Hospital offered up this building, Alpha House. And in there, 37 religious congregations support that program. They provide $1.5 million worth of food and supplies every year and 2,000 volunteers to help run that operation. So there's a lot you can do. And so when we got done with those two little things, we decided to unleash our blueprint to end homelessness. In 2004, that was our 10-year plan to end homelessness in Washtenaw County. Don't tell me what the year is, okay? Okay? I'm still thinking we might make it. So it's very daunting, but we've done a lot. So We've created 150 new units of housing. We've brought in almost 300 vouchers that pay for housing for people, including 100 for veterans. These are all for folks who are homeless. And we've set up a homeless court so that people don't have to go to jail and get more barriers to successful housing. And we've provided eviction prevention services for over 3,000 people. But that's just the tip of the iceberg, because we know that it's all about housing. And we think in Washtenaw County, we need about 1,000 more units of housing to address the population that has need right now. But that's where you come in, because we need everybody's involvement to be able to make this happen. And I know that you care enough to make it happen. I'm going to tell you why we know housing is the answer and not everything else. Because we learned about 15 years ago that if you put people into housing and then supported them, it was actually cheaper than if you had them in shelters and have them using all the expensive resources in the community, like police and jail and psychiatric hospitalizations and the emergency room as their medical clinic. 6 times more expensive to have people living as homeless and in shelters than it is to be in housing. So these are some examples of what's going on, because I'm told nobody ever believes that when I tell them that it's 6 times more expensive. In Seattle, they built a housing development specifically for folks who are homeless and severe alcoholics. They compared the cost of supporting those folks in their housing with the folks who were right down the street at the shelter, who were also going to the hospital, getting in jail, all those kinds of things, and they found that it was almost $2,500 per person per month cheaper in the housing. That's $30,000 a year per person. That's a lot of housing. In Portland, Maine, they found that within the first 6 months of moving people into permanent supportive housing, mental health costs dropped 57%. And that was due largely to the fact that there was an 80% reduction in psychiatric hospitalizations for those folks. That's some housing. Okay. So right now, we're in a very difficult time politically. We've got sequestration. We've got Congress fighting over budgets. We're losing political will to do things like ending homelessness. But when politicians start playing chicken with budgets, who loses? It's always the folks with the least voice and the least political clout. And that's, again, where you come in. We need you to speak out. We need you to say that you want to see an end to homelessness. You can do a lot of other things. You can help us raise money. You can design the next kind of housing that's cheaper to build for homeless folks. But by far and away, not remaining silent is what we need you to do the most. So I've learned a lot of things in my life of doing this work. I've learned the power of working together. I know that people care. I know that people want to help out. And so what I will ask you to do is just remember these words. We cannot remain silent, and we must not become onlookers. Thank you.